This might be a hot take, but Pokemon Sword and Shield are some of the best Pokemon games of all time. There are a lot of things I like about these games, but mainly I love the way that the Pokemon look out in the world with their 3D models, and I especially love the way that the shinies look in this game. That, combined with such a huge selection of Pokemon that are readily available through the wild area, makes it so you can build some of the most incredible shiny teams in these games. So that's why I decided to try to beat Pokemon Shield with Hardcore Nuzlocke rules using only shiny Pokemon. I know you came for the shinies, so I'm not going to waste too much of your time here, but if you've never heard of a Hardcore Nuzlocke, basically it's a self-imposed rule set for playing a Pokemon game that makes beating the game extremely difficult. The specific rules are on the screen now, as well as down in the description if you want to dive into that. But without further ado, let's get into the game and start finding some shiny Pokemon. We kick off our run and make our way through the long slog of unskippable cutscenes and dialogue that is the beginning of this game. And unfortunately for you, but fortunately for me, the starters are shiny locked in this game, so we can skip the whole soft reset process that these runs usually start with, thank goodness. After selecting the best starter Grookey, then defeating Hop and his menacing Wooloo, we say goodbye to our friendly neighborhood Budoos and set off on our adventure. There are two early game Pokemon that I really want on my team, so we'll have to come back, but we start off by hunting for our shiny Rookidee on Route 2 as our real starter. With some extreme patience and lots of YouTube videos on the second screen, we finally managed to find our shiny Rookidee, which we catch and nickname Carver. And I gotta say, shiny Rookidee with its yellow back is pretty cool, but the main reason that I caught this was for the shiny of its final evolution, Corviknight, which we might get to show off later if it makes it that far. With our first shiny snagged, we decided to progress through the game a little bit before getting back to grinding. So we head to the professor's house or something and beat Hop again. I'm gonna be the greatest trainer ever! Well, you're already 0-2 to me, buddy, so you're not off to too hot of a start. Anyway, from here we really start our adventure and set off to the wild area in Modestoke City. We take care of the ever-important opening ceremonies and select our trainer number. I felt like 69 or 420 might be played out at this point, so I decided to go for something twice as nice. Nice. From here, we head back to do a quick pass through the wild area to see if anything really tempted me into a shiny hunt, but ultimately, we know what we need to do, so we double back and start hunting for the best boy. I really don't think any shiny run of this game is complete without finding a shiny Wooloo, so we do the darn thing. And after a longer time than you've probably spent frolicking among the fields of Postwick, we finally come across this true outcast. While he may not fit in at school, he fits right into our team, and we nickname him Lewis. With our first two Pokemon secured, we decide to start making some headway in the game, so we make our way to Turffield Town. But just as we're headed out of Modestoke, we're rudely blocked by Hop, who demands a battle, which you would think he would have learned his lesson at this point, but you know, who am I to judge? Anyway, a few hone claws with Rookidee followed by the busted move Power Trip is more than enough to sweep his team, and that's 0-3 big fella. The last thing we have to take care of before heading into Turffield Town is a quick battle with Bede, and that gives our Rookidee enough experience to evolve into a Corvisquire, whose darker color palette fits very nicely with the theme that we have going on so far. Then we head into the stadium to start the gym challenge. But just before we get started, we get a friend ball from Ball Guy, which is truly the most meaningful present that anyone has ever given me. If you're looking for a friend ball guy, you found one. Anyway, this challenge has us hurting these disgusting pleb Wooloos, and I get so sick at the sight of them, I can barely finish it. But we manage to push through, then head into the battle against Milo and his grass types. If you couldn't tell so far, we aren't taking any chances in this run, so we set up a couple of home claws, then one-shot his Glossifleur with Pluck. From here, he sends in his ace Eldegoss, so we Dynamax our Corvisquire, then manage to outspeed it and take it out with a max Airstream. With Milo defeated, we feel up to another shiny hunt, and I felt like my team needed something with more coverage, especially with the water gym leader Nessa coming up, which we don't really match up with particularly well at this point. But of course, we also want something with a super cool shiny model, so the pool is relatively limited. Finally, after searching and searching, we found a shiny that caught my eye. So we head to the Iron Island, deal with all the intro stuff with this gentlewoman, then make our way to the training lowlands in this one specific beach where we find dozens and dozens of Staryus as far as the eye could see. With the spawns so readily available, this was our quickest hunt yet, and we managed to nab a shiny Staryu, which we nicknamed Starla. From here, we head back to the wild area outside of Modestoke and grab the Water Stone, which we use to evolve Staryu into a Starmie. While I will miss the elegant white sand tones of shiny Staryu, the dark, more sultry palette of Starmie fits the name Starla much better. Also, Starmie can learn insane coverage moves, so we teach it a couple super strong TRs like Thunderbolt, Surf, Ice Beam, and Psychic that we bought in the wild area. With Starla fully juiced up, we make our way to Hullbury City, the location of the next gym challenge. Oh, there goes Chairman Rose in his underwear again. That guy really thinks he can get away with anything, huh? But that is definitely not our problem, so we head in to challenge the gym leader Nessa and her water types. As we're making our way through the gym challenge, Wooloo levels up enough to evolve into a Dubwool, and as much as I was considering canceling this evolution and keeping it as a Wooloo forever, I just couldn't bring myself to, because we really don't want to take any risks in this run. While he may not be the best boy anymore, the Dubwool shiny is also quite good, so there's some consolation here. From here, we finally arrive at the gym challenge against Nessa. This is Starla's time to shine. It outspeeds both Nessa's Goldeen and her Arrokuda and takes them out in one hit with a Thunderbolt. Then she sends in her Ace Dreadnought, so we Dynamax Starla and hit it with a Max Lightning. Unfortunately, it isn't quite enough to take it out, so we end up having to tank a Max Darkness, which we thankfully live, then clean it up on the next turn with another Max Lightning. And with Nessa defeated, we finally feel ready to start hunting for the next member of our team. So we double back to the Galar Mine to look for a Pokemon that has hands down my favorite shiny model when fully evolved. And that Pokemon is Roggenrola. We spend an unreasonable amount of time in Galar Mine and eventually find this shiny, stony boy, which we catch and nickname Giga Chad. From here, we train him up and evolve him into a Boldore, whose shiny model is also insane in its own right. Then we make a quick trade to evolve this thing into the beautiful monster that is shiny Gigalith. I mean, just look at this thing. The colors and the contrast between them are amazing. It's like a wild berry Pop-Tart. Hey, where my 90s kids at, am I right? Haha. I'm so alone. Moving on, we wrap back around to Monostoke City to challenge the next gym leader, Kabu. Kabu specializes in fire types, and so we lead with Gigalith against his Ninetales. On the first turn, we instantly Dynamax and take a Will-O-Wisp, but we had planned for this and given Gigalith a Rossberry beforehand, which cures the burn, and we take out the Ninetales with a Max Rockfall. From here, he brings in his Arcanine, who hits us with a Bite, but also goes down to a Max Rockfall. Finally, he brings in his Ace Centiskorch, who hits us with a Max Flutterby that we tank, and it ultimately goes down to a 4 times effective, you guessed it, Max Rockfall. With Kabu fully retired, we set out through the wild area to Hammerlock City. Here, we're finally able to upgrade our drip, and we get to meet this foxy lady Opal. Boy, I do love to watch you walk away, Opal. After battling our way through the next route, we arrive at Stow on Side, where we have a quick battle with Hop, putting him at a comfortable 0-4. Then we head into the spookiest gym challenge of them all. I'm gonna be sick. After a quick trip to the bathroom stall, we're finally ready to challenge Alistair, who specializes in ghost types and looks like the personification of how boomers view Gen Z. For this fight, we lead with Corvisquire against his lead, Yamask. On the first turn, we go for a Hone Claws, which promptly gets disabled. Then on the next turn, we hit it with a super effective Power Trip, which doesn't quite take it out, but not too big of an issue. We finish it up with another Power Trip on the following turn. Next up is his Cursula, who goes down to a couple Power Trips, and his second to last Pokemon is Mimikyu. We break its disguise on the first turn with Power Trip, and it sets up a Hone Claws. We're a little worried about tanking a hit with Corvisquire, so we swap to Lewis, who is able to take it out with a couple paybacks over the next few turns. Finally, he brings in his Ace Gengar, and since Lewis is a little low, we make a swap to Giga Chad. We're able to easily tank a Max Darkness on the turn we swap in, and then we follow up by tanking a G-Max Terror, then we take it out with a super effective Max Quake. With Alistair defeated, we head outside to try to stop Ede from destroying a historical site, which he's doing for some reason.
Did you stand in the way of a Pokemon Simple Beam?
My god, I hope she's holding a Rossberry because that is a certified Pokeburn. From here, we head into the Glimmerwood Tangle, where our next catch awaits. There are no overworld Pokemon in the Tangle, but luckily, if you interact with the mushrooms on the side, you can get a static encounter. After some time spent searching, we finally find our shiny Impidimp, which we catch and nickname Mo. Then we train this Blue Devil up enough to where he evolves into his older, angstier form, Morgrem. Now we head into my favorite town in all of Pokemon, Baunlia, and I really wish that there was more to do here because I love spending time in this town. But alas, there isn't much, so we head in to challenge the gym leader Opal. Just before we head into the fight, we train up Corvisquire to level 38 where it evolves into a Corviknight, whose shiny model I think is insanely cool and really drives home its steel typing more than its normal form. With Corviknight evolved, we head into the fight, where we lead with Starla against her Weezing. This one is pretty straightforward because Opal does periodically ask you questions, and if you answer them correctly, you get huge stat boosts. So we take out the Weezing with a super effective Psychic on the first turn, then we get a free stat boost from the first question, and she sends in her Mawile. It tanks a Thunderbolt and hits us with a super effective Crunch, but we live and take it out with another Thunderbolt on the next turn. From here, she sends in her Togekiss, and we stall with Recover until we get a special defense boost from another question. Now we're easily able to take it out with a couple super effective Thunderbolts, and finally she sends in her Ace Alchemy. She Gigantamaxes, and we Dynamax and hit it with a super effective Max Steel Spike, which doesn't quite kill, but we we live a G-Max finale on the next turn and clean it up. And now, after some more plot stuff and uniting two truly star-crossed lovers, we set off for Sirchester. But on the way, in normal hop fashion, we are rudely interrupted and forced to battle. His team is pretty strong at this point, so this one is actually interesting. We lead with Corviknight against his Trevenant, which we take out on the first turn with a Drill Peck. From here, he sends in his Heatmore, who lives a Drill Peck and hits us with a super effective Fire Lash, which doesn't do too much. Then we clean it up with another Drill Peck on the following turn. Next, he sends in his Boltund, so we swap in Gigalith, who gets roared out, and Mo gets dragged in. We live a Spark and get some good damage on it with a Dark Pulse. Then we clean it up with a Sucker Punch on the next turn. Next, he sends in his Snorlax, so we swap to Lewis. We trade a few double kicks for some body slams and ultimately end up paralyzed and too low to stay in. So we make a swap to Gigalith, who takes it out with an Earthquake after tanking a body slam. Finally, he's down to just his ace Inteleon, so we bring in Starla, who hits it with a few Thunderbolts, but ultimately gets its special attack dropped too much by Inteleon's tearful looks. So we have to make a swap to Corviknight, who's able to finish it off with a Drill Peck. And that's 0-5. Now it's just a short trip to Sirchester, and after making our way through my least favorite gym of all time, we take on the gym leader Melanie and her ice types. Just before heading in, Mo does level up and adapts to the frigid conditions by putting on its white fur coat as he evolves into a Grimmsnarl. And his white hair / coat situation not only looks fabulous, but also gives us some much needed contrast in our team's colors. Anyway, we head in to challenge the gym leader. We lead with Gigalith against Melanie's Frostmoth. Even after getting our attack harshly dropped by a Feather Dance on the first turn, a 4 times effective Smackdown is more than enough to take it out in one shot. Next, she brings in her Darmanitan. This thing is extremely dangerous, but luckily it goes for a taunt on the first turn, so we get some good chip in, and then the next turn it misses an Icicle Crash, so we take it out with a second Smackdown and get out unscathed. Next up, she sends in her Ice Cube, and we're only able to break its Ice Face with a Smackdown before getting frozen and having to swap out. From here, we bring in Corviknight, set up a couple Hone Claws, then break its Ice Face with a Steel Wing. Then we decide to Dynamax and finish off the Ice Cube with a Max Airstream because we had our speed dropped by Icy Wind too many times, and we were hoping the speed boost from Airstream would help us outspeed her Ace. Finally, she brings in her Ace Lapras, who G-Maxes. We stall for a turn with a Max Guard and then tank a G-Max Resonance, which we barely live, and fire back with a Max Airstream, which does a disappointing amount of damage on the next turn. From here, we're way too low to stay in, so we make a swap to Starla, who's able to tank a Max Geyser, and finally this thing is out of G-Max turns. From here, we trade Icy Winds for Thunderbolts until we finally finish it off. Oh, don't cry, ball guy. We'll be back soon, I promise. Anyway, before we can head out of town, we have to give Hop another Smackdown. 0-6, buddy, you'll get one day. Keeping your running total really makes me realize just how many times you have to battle Hop in this freaking game. Moving on, we head to Spikemuth, where we sneak around the side to this very secret entrance that none of the people out front seem to notice for some reason. Here we take on Team Yell and ultimately the gym leader Pierce, who specializes in dark types, and fun fact, is the very first dark type gym leader in all of Pokemon. Before this fight, we managed to find the TR for Body Press in the wild area, and we taught it to Lewis. Body Press is a fighting type move that has its damage based off of your defense stat instead of your attack stat. So it's pretty insane on Pokemon like Dubwool that not only have high defense, but also have great moves like Cotton Guard that can quickly raise its defense. So we lead with Dubwool and set up 2 Cotton Guards, which maxes out our defense, and then we take out his lead Scrafty with a super effective Body Press. From here, he sends in his Ace Obstagoon, who obstructs us on the first turn, but goes down to a 4 times effective Body Press on the next turn. Next up, he sends in his Malamar, who tanks a Body Press, but goes down without much trouble on the next turn. Finally, he's down to just his last Pokemon Skuntank, who also goes down to 2 Body Presses. After defeating Pierce, we take the opportunity to grab the Choice Specs that are tucked away back here, and then we steal the show. As we're headed out of town, there's some trouble in Hammerlock, but for once, someone other than us handles it. So we're free to make our way to challenge the next gym leader, Raihan, and his dragon types. This team is kind of random, but anyway, we head into the battle. This one is in the doubles format, so we lead with Starla and Lewis against his Flygon and Gigalith. On the first turn, Starla tanks a super effective Crunch from Flygon, then fires back with a 4 times effective Ice Beam, which one-shots the Flygon. And we set up a Cotton Guard with Dubwool. From here, Raihan brings in his Sandaconda, and we go for another Cotton Guard with Dubwool to finish maxing our defense, then hit Gigalith with a Scald from Starla, which fortunately burns it. This burn makes it so his Body Press does basically nothing to Starla, and Dubwool tanks an Earth Power from the Sandaconda. The next turn, we hit the Sandaconda with a Body Press, which just barely doesn't take it out, and we finish off the Gigalith with another Scald. At this point, Sandaconda paralyzes Starla with a Glare, so we swap it out and bring in Corviknight, and Raihan brings in his Ace Duraludon. On the next turn, we outspeed the Duraludon with Lewis and take it out with a single Body Press, even through Gmax. And from here, it's as easy as cleaning up the Sandaconda with another body press on the following turn. With all 8 gyms defeated, we head off to the final tournament, which is slated to take place in Winden. So Hop and I board the train to Winden, which instead of taking us all the way there, for some reason it drops us off in the frozen, desolate wasteland outside of the city. This whole thing seems like a huge design flaw, especially considering that this is the biggest city in the region. Not sure who planned this one out, but I hope they got fired. After making our way into Winden and grabbing some quick balls, we double back to the Lake of Outrage to start hunting down our next catch. There are 2 Pokemon here that I would be okay with finding a shiny of, but unfortunately they're both relatively rare, so this one took a while. The first option that we didn't end up catching is Haxorus, and the second option that we did end up finding is the spookiest dragon itself, Dracloak, which evolves into the pseudo-legendary of this generation, Dragapult. Amazingly, we snagged this thing on the very first quick ball, but less fortunately, it's level 56, and given the level cap and the fact that it doesn't evolve until level 60, we can't quite use it yet. However, with the hunting done for now, we head back to Winden to take on the semifinals of the tournament. The first battle is against Marnie and her dark types. We head into the battle and we lead with Lewis against her Liepard. The first turn, we set up a Cotton Guard and it sets up a nasty plot. From here, we get a little worried about the Liepard getting too strong, so we go for a body press, and luckily, it just goes for another nasty plot, so we're able to take it out without any issue. Next up, she sends in Scrafty, who we outspeed and take out with a body press. And next, she sends in Toxicroak, so we take that opportunity to set up another Cotton Guard. It does poison us with a Toxic, but we do fire back with a max body press on the next turn, which gets it low but doesn't quite take it out, and then it confuses us with a Swagger. Thankfully, the next turn, we hit it with a body press through the confusion and finish it off. Her second to last mon is Morpeko, and we're worried about taking too much damage from Toxic and confusion, so we swapped a Gigalith. We get hit by a Swagger, but we take it out with a super effective Earthquake through the confusion on the next turn. Finally, she's down to just her ace Grimmsnarl, so we Dynamax and then proceed to trade Max Rockfalls for a Max Snooze and a Max Starfall and take it out. From here, we progress to the next round of the tournament where we have our final battle with Hop and his upgraded team. We lead with Mo against his Dubwool, and even though we get paralyzed by a body slam on the first turn, we manage to land a superpower through the paralysis and take it out. From here, he sends in Pincurchin, so we swapped a Giga Chad who gets poisoned by Poison Jab on the turn we swap, but amazingly, our big pile of rocks is able to outspeed this electric urchin and take it out with an Earthquake. Next up is his Snorlax, who just goes down to a superpower. Next is his Corviknight, so we swapped a Starla and Dynamax early. We hit it with a Max Lightning on the first turn, which doesn't quite take it out, but with the electric terrain setup, we're able to finish it off on the next turn, even with Hop using a full restore. Now he's down to just his ace Inteleon, who Dynamaxes and hits us with a Max Darkness, which we barely managed to live, then fire back with a Max Lightning that doesn't quite kill. At this point, we're out of Dynamax turns, so we proceed to stall out the rest of its Dynamax by swapping to Carver, then to Dubwool, and finally we finish it off with a Body Slam. After putting Hop's career to rest at a comfortable 0-7, we head out of the stadium for the day. Does he always greet you like that? From here, some serious evil stuff goes down, but thankfully with some skillful Pokemon battling and the power of Pierce's Rock, we're able to head into Rose Tower and try to put a stop to it. At the very top of the tower, we find ourselves going up against a very upset Oleana. So of course, we have to take her on in a battle to the death. Nah, I'm just kidding, just Pokemon. She leads with Frostlass, so we lead with Corviknight. The first turn, it burns us with Will-O-Wisp, but we cure ourselves with the Rossberry that we had given Corviknight before the battle and fire back with an Iron Head, which takes it out in one shot. Next, she sends in Salazzle, so we make a swap to Starla, who tanks an Incinerate and a Venoshock, then takes it out with a super effective Psychic. Next up is Serena, so we swap back to Corviknight and take it out with a Brave Bird. From here, she sends in a Melodic, so we swap back to Starla, then this thing just proceeds to set up an Aqua Ring and a Safeguard instead of attacking, so we take it out with a couple Thunderbolts. Now she's down to just her ace Garbodor. She G-Maxes and we Dynamax. We hit her with a Max Lightning since we're locked into that move because of our choice specs, then we take big damage from a Max Quake. Expecting another Max Quake, we make a swap to Corviknight, who's immune, but it goes for a Max Rockfall instead. Luckily, Corviknight is a beast, so it lives it no problem, even though it's below half health when it took the hit. But now it's too low to risk taking another hit, so we swap to Giga Chad, who tanks the Rockfall and takes it out with an Earthquake on the next turn. With Oleana defeated and an evil monologue overheard, we can sleep easy tonight and rest up for the finals tomorrow. The next day, we head into the finals of the tournament, and in the first round, we're supposed to face off against Nessa, but somehow Bede managed to sneak his way past all the security and onto the field to challenge us. Luckily, we were prepared, so we lead with Starmie against his Mawile. The first turn we go for a flash cannon since Starmie is holding the choice specs and we want to lock ourselves into that move for the rest of his team. It barely doesn't kill, so we have to tank a super effective crunch, which we do, and then we finish it off with a few more flash cannons as Bede goes for a full restore on the next turn. Next up, he sends in his Rapidash, who's just barely able to live a flash cannon and fires back with a takedown. Fortunately, we're fine, and the Rapidash takes itself out with the recoil. Next up is his Gardevoir, and we're a little bit too low at this point, so we make a swap to Corviknight. We tank a Dazzling Gleam, then outspeed it with an Iron Head and take it out. Finally, he's down to just his Ace Hatterene, which he brings in and instantly Gigantamaxes. So we Dynamax Carver. Unfortunately, our Max Steel Spike just barely doesn't KO. Thankfully, we're able to live through the Max Flare from Hatterene and finish it off with a Max Steel Spike on the next turn. With that interruption out of the way, we head into the actual first round of the tournament against Nessa. She leads with Golisopod and we lead with Gigalith. The first turn, it goes for a Swords Dance, which allows us to land a super effective Stone Edge that takes it out in one shot. From here, she sends in her Barraskewda, so we swap to Starmie. After tanking a super effective Throat Chop, we take it out with a Thunderbolt. Next up is Seaking, and we're a little worried about losing Starmie if we aren't able to one-shot this fish, so we swap to Mo. Mo gets hit by a Mega Horn on the turn it swaps in, and then a Smart Strike on the following turn, but we're able to take it out with 2 false surrenders. Next up is her Pelipper, and since Mo is too low, we make a swap to Giga Chad. We Dynamax on the next turn and plan on using Max Rockfall. Unfortunately, we get hit by a Water Pulse, which instantly confuses us, and then we proceed to hit ourselves in confusion 2 times in a row, which wastes most of our Dynamax turns. Finally, we do get through the confusion and take this thing out with a Rockfall. Now she's down to her last Pokemon Dreadnought, and we're out of Dynamax. We obviously can't stand with Giga Chad, so we make a swap to Lewis and start setting up Cotton Guards. Thankfully, we make it through the Dynamax turns without any crits, and we finish her Dreadnought off with a super effective boosted Body Press. With Nessa's boat thoroughly rocked, there's no time to lose, and we head into the next round against the Angst King himself, Alistair. We lead with Grimmsnarl since its Dark-type moves will hit his entire team super effectively. On the first turn against his Dusknoir, we hit it with a false surrender, but it's not quite enough to take it out, so we end up having to take a Rock Tomb. Fortunately, it doesn't do too much damage, but it does lower our speed, which could be annoying going forward. From here, Alistair uses a full restore, and we hit it with another false surrender. Then, annoyingly, on the next turn, Dusknoir outspeeds us and disables our false surrender, so we end up having to finish it off with a Sucker Punch instead. Next up is his Chandelure. We go for a Sucker Punch on the first turn, which fails because it burns us with a Will-O-Wisp instead of attacking. The next turn, we hit it with a Sucker Punch, which doesn't even do half damage, and we have to tank a Mystical Fire. At this point, Grimmsnarl is pretty banged up, so we swap to Starla, who tanks a Mystical Fire, then outspeeds it with a Scald on the next turn. Next up is Poltergeist. We don't want to linger in with Starla too long against Ghost types, so we make a swap to Dubwool. From here, we hit it with a Payback, which lowers its defense and increases its speed, and it goes for a Nasty Plot to boost its special attack. And this setup could be pretty problematic for us. Luckily, it can't hit us with any stab moves since Dubwool is immune to Ghost, but it does outspeed us and get pretty decent damage with a Giga Drain, but we live and finish it off with a Payback. Next up is his Cursula, who we take out with a few Paybacks. Now he's down to just his Ace Gengar, who Gigantamaxes, and we Dynamax Lewis. We go for a Guard on the first turn to stall a little bit, and then we fire off a Max Darkness on the next turn, which doesn't do too much because our attack was lowered by Cursula. It hits us with a Max Ooze, which fortunately we live, then we stall out the final turn of Dynamax with another Max Guard. From here, we swap to Corviknight because it's immune to poison moves, and on the next turn, we tank a Shadow Ball and fire back with the Brave Bird that takes this thing out. Unfortunately, Pierce lost on the other side of the bracket, which I guess really embarrassed Marnie, even though she didn't even make it to this part of the tournament. But with Pierce out, we find ourselves up against the social media master himself, Raihan. He leads with his Torkoal, and we lead with Starla to bait a Solar Beam. On the first turn, we make an instant swap to Gigalith to overwrite the Sun from Torkoal's Drought, which locks it into charging a Solar Beam. Now we make a swap to Corviknight to tank the Solar Beam, then instantly swap back to Giga Chad to tank a Lava Plume. Then we hit it with an Earthquake, which just barely doesn't take it out and allows us to get hit by a Yawn. Fortunately, the turtle goes down to the Sandstorm chip at the end of the turn. From here, he sends in his Flygon, so we swap to Dubwool, who takes pretty big damage from its Earthquake, and it does a little bit more damage than we were expecting, so we swap to Carver as it sets up a Sandstorm. Now we proceed to trade Iron Heads for Crunches, burning Raihan's full restore in the process, and eventually taking out his Flygon. Next up is his Turtonator, so we we make the swap to Starla and hit it with an Ice Beam, which immediately freezes it, and we take it out for free on the next turn. The second to last Pokemon is Gudra, who is an absolute unit and takes a super effective Ice Beam no problemo. It sets up Rain, and this thing runs Thunder. So we make a swap to Gigalith to overwrite that weather with a Sandstorm, which makes the Thunder miss on the following turn. Next it goes for another Rain Dance, so we're free to finish it with Earthquake. Finally, he's down to just his Ace Duraludon, and we have ourselves a good old-fashioned Dynamax duel. It hits us with a Max Steel Spike, which does way more damage than we were expecting, and we fire back with a Max Quake, which does way less damage than we were expecting. We want to stall it for another turn with Max Guard, but we're locked into attacking moves since we're running an Assault Vest on Gigalith, so we swap to Corviknight, who tanks a Steel Spike, but gets crit, which makes us uncomfortable to keep it in, so we swap to Starla, who ultimately tanks a Max Rocks Fall, and then finishes it off with an Ice Beam on the next turn. With the Dragon Master dispatched, it's time for the Grand Finals. But of course, we are rudely interrupted by Chairman Rose and his evil plot that I guess everybody just kind of forgot about yesterday. So we head up to the top of the power plant to put a stop to him. But first, with the level cap raised, we're finally able to evolve Dracloak into Dragapult, which we immediately put to the test against Chairman Rose in our final showdown. Before the battle, we taught Dragapult Flamethrower and gave it the choice specs to hold. With that setup, it's a pretty simple battle. Escavalier goes down to a 4x effective Flamethrower, same with his Berserker, also his Klinklang, and his second to last Pokemon Ferrothorn. Finally, he sends in his last Pokemon Copperajah, which he immediately Gigantamaxes. We respond with a Dynamax of our own and hit it with a Max Flare, which amazingly only does about half damage. Thankfully, we're able to tank the Max Steel Spike from this thing on the next turn and finish it off with a second Max Flare. Now we have a quick face-off against Eternatus, and after defeating it and listening to a ridiculous amount of that one howl sound effect, we can finally head into the finals of the tournament against Leon. After a little bit of training and preparation, we head into the battle, where we lead with Dragapult against his lead Aegislash. On the first turn, his Aegislash goes for a King Shield, so we go for a Phantom Force. The next turn, our Phantom Force connects, but it doesn't do enough damage to take out his Aegislash, so we have to tank a super effective Shadow Ball. Thankfully, it doesn't crit, and we're able to finish this thing off with a Flamethrower on the next turn. From here, he sends in his Haxorus, which we take out in one shot with my new absolute favorite move, Dragon Darts. Next up, he sends in his own pleb Dragapult, which we outspeed and take out with our dive-bombing Dreepies. From here, he brings in Seismitoad, so we swap to Starmie. We tank an Earthquake, and then we take it out with a 4x effective Grass Knot. Next up is his Cinderace, and since we have the choice specs on, we're locked into Grass Knot. So we swap to Gigalith, who comes in, tanks an Acrobatics, followed by a Pyro Ball, and takes it out in one hit with an Earthquake. Finally, he's down to just his Ace Charizard, who he brings in and instantly Dynamaxes. We Dynamax in response and tank a Max Overgrowth, then take it out with a 4x effective Max Rockfall. And with that, at the ripe age of 12, we have officially become the newest champion of the Galar region. Thanks for watching, till next time.